Hi guys, thanks for tuning into another episode of Nuggets News, or our weekly crypto news update with Michael, and he's been pumping out all that research over on the website. And we got a big dip, and for those of you that have been following along members in the data section, Philip has been absolutely nailing this cycle, and he was 95% cash before that dip. And obviously I've been every video the past few weeks and that update telling people make sure you're taking profits, particularly on altcoins. You don't want to get caught bag holding. And then we got that nasty crash. So we're going to break that down and the opportunity and how that played out, as well as all the news this week.
Crazy times. What a time to be alive. So just for context, the market is significantly bigger than what it was during COVID, FTX, meaning the crypto market. And it's not a factor of 10 or 15 times bigger, but it's bigger. But this was the biggest liquidation event by a factor of almost 10.
Yeah.
And so just the amount of wealth destruction is incredible. And a lot of it's bounced back. And then, we'll see if we have another sort of double test of that level. But man, what a time to be alive, hey, when just wealth just gets created and destroyed in the flick of a tweet.
Yeah, I might have a bit more of a rant about how it all played out when we get to some of these slides and articles, but yeah, not good for traders.
Not at all. And so we'll have a look, like obviously when you see some of these numbers, and tokens like SWI, Cardano, Polkadot, Dogecoin, some of them wicked 80% down, just obscene numbers. And so if you're levered long on this stuff, you want to hope that your protocol is not just scam wicking you and liquidating you. It just goes to show you just need to be careful. And we always think that the worst will never happen, but often does, especially in crypto. And I've got battle scars. I've been on the receiving end of these punishments multiple times in my now, I don't know, what is that, 8 years in crypto. I've learnt my lesson and I'm uber conservative now. And I think that's what it does. It pushes you more towards Bitcoin maximalism the longer you're here. But yeah, what a week it's been.
Yeah, or sticking to that strategy of holding high quality assets and not leverage trading and everything we've been talking about. So hopefully a lot of our members and everyone following these videos got through relatively unscathed. If anything, you should add some cash on the sideline and bought up some things on the cheap.
Big time. So what happened? Well, was it a Trump tweet, or was this insider trading, or was this all planned? Was it a combination of both? Was someone sitting around just having the Judas candle down, ready to go, and just needed something like Trump's tweet to light the match? And it seems like most of it was consolidated around Binance. They have had an obscene amount of thin liquidity on a lot of different places, and it just shows that how we're just propped up on a lot of fake volume and just fake market caps, really fake valuations. But this was a bit of a forensic tweet that went out just saying how Trump says one thing, China says one thing, Trump says another thing, and all of a sudden down she goes. And you can see it went down way more in crypto than what it did in traditional markets. Yeah, $19 billion collapse. So, and this is all, look at that liquidity vacuum. All of a sudden now there's no liquidity to support the collapse. And so these cascading liquidations, I get wiped out, that has to force sell my position, drops the price, force sell somebody else's position who is more conservative, wipes out the price, and it just cascades down. Normally you'd have a liquidity buffer that would catch this. Nope, just shot straight through the whole thing. So
yeah, we've seen those insider trading threads on people that were placing, whales putting on huge short positions right before it. That liquidity vacuum, so they pull all the liquidity, thin the books, and Binance and all these platforms have got that cross margin liquidity now. So people are thinking, oh, what's the worst case scenario? Maybe 30, 40. Even if you're only on, 1.5 leverage, once you drop down to that sort of 50, 60, 70, 80% that we got to, and some things wick down 99% on different exchanges. So it didn't matter, what positions you're in. If you had trades open, you basically got shut down by the big boys at Mission Control that are still running the show behind the scenes. And it's just so frustrating that this is where crypto is still at for traders. But yeah, if you're a long-term hodler or whatever, this didn't really affect you. And then Trump goes around and basically makes friends with China again before market open, and everything bounces back for the most part. And this sort of flush out is kind of a good thing in the big picture for price action to continue up medium to long term, which is still what our data is suggesting.
And full transparency, I'd been a little nervous. I was sitting in spot everything, and so got to sit back and just enjoy this one. My only regrets was I didn't have more stables on the side to buy in. But yeah, it was a horrible weekend for a lot of people, but it was a great weekend for some people.
And just on that, on the sidelines, guys, having a bid on an exchange is fine or whatever, but Uptrade, so many people, they want to get that money in quickly. And yeah, our partner Uptrade, description below, once you get set up with them and, get on the phone, get money in, these are the sort of examples where you can have money in pretty quickly once you've set up with them and dealt with them, versus trying to send a large amount to an exchange and then dealing with the bank and the waiting and all that. So can't recommend those guys enough.
Absolutely. Now, this is a little bit of like a loaded headline because, it's the Trump family that is running World Liberty Financial, and Trump Jr., Donald Jr., is the one running around all over the place, like shilling it. And so they're opportunists. They always have been. No one is in denial that they're opportunists. I think most people in power is a certain personality type that likes to get into these positions. And, the world's greatest stock trader, Nancy Pelosi, has been in this seat for a long period of time. And, I'm sure Warren Buffett was taking tips from her because she's outperformed him like significantly over a long period of time. I say this all in jest because, this is someone who's, making 200 grand a year and is worth tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars. And so it doesn't surprise me when I see stuff like this. Of course, the Trumps have seen that there's a vehicle for wealth creation here. I think this is obviously it fits a narrative of, well, people who don't like Trump. I saw Four Corners in Australia had another piece on him as well, saying, he's enriching himself with crypto. And this is it's indirect, but it's true, but it is indirect. And so it goes to show that the narratives from both sides are going to come after people who are making money. And just generally, our society's in this place now where we don't like winners. We don't like people who generate wealth, whether it's ill-gotten or honest. You're going to get put in the same basket and with the people who acquire wealth in an unscrupulous manner. And so it's just one of those things now. It's like, where are we going when most people are now going to be dependent on some sort of UBI? We don't like it when people are successful in any sort of way. So
I think it's just crazy that Trump's now, they're reporting he's got 800 million plus of Bitcoin, and then Barron's got 200 plus. And, when you're running a project like World Liberty, or you've got access to, a tweet that can move the market, this stuff is just going to happen. And as you said, you talk about Nancy Pelosi, but is there any real regulations? And if you're using Hyperliquid or something more decentralized, people have been doing the research on chain and exposing this kind of stuff, but is there any repercussions? So yeah, my fear is that they're going to pump crypto if they've got $1 billion worth of it themselves. But if they keep pulling these sort of shenanigans, it's just going to wreck retail. So same again, guys, just don't be sitting there with leverage trades open and you can wake up and get liquidated, because even those people with stop losses, none of that stuff worked. Exchanges stopped trading. A lot of DEXs even stopped working. All that type of thing. And there's probably going to be plenty more chaos coming.
Absolutely. So, there's all sorts of stories about how Barron's big in the game now as well. But this was the other one that got super interesting about how there was the account that got on Hyperliquid that got made and seeded by a Bitcoin OG 30 minutes before the Trump tweet and walked away with 200 million. And this is another story here about this guy, he shut down and disappeared with $56 million of user funds, and all of a sudden pops up and starts trading this type of stuff. So still an insider's game. This has never been different in TradFi. It's also happening in crypto, so there's no surprises here. But this is the thing that in the forensic breakdown about what happened is that it looks suspicious because there's some people who are just timing this stuff to perfection and walking away with hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
This was an interesting one. We saw that the US has now seized a couple of 100,000 Bitcoin from a Chinese national for something to do with pigs. That they had some sort of pig slaughter operation or something like that, illegally.
I saw that, or I don't know if that was just the front for what they were actually doing with luxury goods and whatever sort of front that they had. But I did see that headline about pig slaughtering. And yeah.
It just means that, like, obviously, if you're a Bitcoin holder, you need to work on your privacy strategies, because you now become a target when the government is now also interested in your crypto. Not like back in the day where they like would laugh at you. Now they're very interested in your assets.
Yeah.
To shift gears a little bit, Galaxy Digital, Mike Novogratz, they've bailed out a data center here. And so very interesting here, like people with the tentacles are getting into like everything. And I believe like AI, like on-chain compute, or just compute in general, and on-chain activity, it's all merging together to be this new like meta business model where financial companies are now tech companies, and tech companies are now financial companies. And, Tether raised money this month at a $500 billion valuation. And this is a company that's already producing $10 billion a month. And so they're going to be the biggest bank in the world soon. And this is all going to be done off of the back of 20 employees or something like that, sitting in the Cayman Islands or wherever they are.
Yeah, and it gets into, does Tether's, bit of a grey, dodgy history maybe, and all that type of thing. This gets into some deep rabbit holes about Bitcoin, and does Tether float the price and all this type of thing. But even if all that's true, I still think numbers probably going to go up because of the political involvement now. Yeah.
The only way now we've seen it in Australia, we've seen it in America, we've seen it in Europe. No citizen base has an appetite for austerity. No one's going to want budget cuts, cuts to public services. The second that happens, the people who are trying to balance a budget are called a Nazi, and, there's riots in the streets. So there's no appetite for people's standard of living to deteriorate in any way, regardless of what's funding that standard of living. And so the only way out of it is to print money. And the only way then to balance that debt is to just completely destroy the denominator, the currency, against assets. And so it's this death spiral. There's no way out of it. Bitcoin is the only way. So another interesting one, we've spoken about this several times. Like, what a time to be trying to launch a project. I'm in that camp too myself a little bit, but Monad is about to release its token. It's coming, its token generation event, and its mainnet. But there is an airdrop here. Monad is pre-trading on a lot of exchanges, like on a pre-market open. It's something like a 10 billion FDV or something like that. It's going to be a top 20 project at launch. I think it got up to about 16 billion. Airdrop here. So if you've played around with it at all and like listened to when we've mentioned it and gone and played around, you're probably eligible for some sort of airdrop. I imagine that this might have some sort of value. So make sure you go and have a play around there. Yep. And just to wrap up, this week, this was a pretty incredible tweet from Pavel. For those that don't know him, he's the billionaire founder of Telegram, something that I use every day. And just like the absolute middle finger that he's giving to his country that he holds a passport in. I believe he's French, Russian, and got a UAE passport as well. But just effectively saying that there is, he wants to out the people that are coming for your data and pushing for free speech. And he had another really massive tweet the other day as well about how he's fearful for what the internet is about to become, just a surveillance tool. Really, really interesting. No one wants you using VPNs. He's saying, France is trying to control people. The European Union's banning people. Digital IDs are coming in across Europe. It's pretty spooky times, especially from people who are quite powerful.
Yeah, just for everyone watching, this is going to be more and more of a focus for us on the privacy tools you can use. What VPNs aren't giving all your data back to the intelligence agencies. How to use phones and crypto debit cards for payments. All these types of things, because as I've been talking about for years, there's just now a huge overlap, and it's obvious to everyone that the government want to control through digital ID and AI and complete surveillance of everything. So we're going to be more and more focused with our research and our group and our premium content on these types of issues and how to remain private online.
We're looking forward for this. It's something we've been chatting about a lot, and I think we can probably have more practical application and using our research abilities to be able to find real life solutions, not just speculative money making tools, but actually how we can protect your wealth and protect yourself, protect your identity.
Yeah. Probably just
One last one. Oh,
oh,
sorry. Yep. Shoot.
one more thing just to add to that was I think privacy coins have had a good run. I did a research piece on this like a year or two ago talking about how I think they're going to become super important, but not necessarily as an investment because none of the big exchanges list Monero anymore. And
Yeah.
Zcash is, you can shield transactions, but it's not really that private. And so I think familiarizing yourself at least with some of these privacy coins and the wallets just to break the chain and maintain a bit of privacy with your digital assets and all that. Again, this is stuff we want to be doing research on because everything else they're absolutely doing this tracking and they want to follow everything you're doing on chain.
Absolutely. For those that want to have some additional homework, this is a great talk to go listen to from Token 2049. You can see it on the YouTube channel from Arthur Hayes. He's very entertaining. I've seen him live several times, but effectively saying that that France is toast. It talks about here that how he would rank the wealth of a nation, and talks about how the two richest countries in the world by his metric is Japan and Germany. When you factor in their net debts and their net assets, so people that own things in their country versus the things that they own in other people's countries, and this is 4,446 billion. So we're talking $4.4 trillion of like a net positive position for Japan and nearly 5 trillion for Germany. And when you think about that, both of these countries were reset effectively 80 years ago and have been able to build an economy from scratch. It goes to show that with technology and like what's coming, there'll be some big winners in the market that adopt new technologies. But going back to France, sorry,
I'm just surprised Australia's not in there with our relatively low debt and the amount of resources we have in ground. I would have thought we'd be up there with similar figures, but
yeah, well, it's a very interesting question. But like when you talk about like the net balance of both France and the US, is who said the two worst places are. This on the right here is San Francisco. That we're talking about net assets versus GDP, like minus 58% for the US and 38% for France. But the point that he makes here, which is incredible, is that the US is still the world reserve currency, so they can just make up money to still cover their losses. France cannot. And go and watch the talk. It's really interesting, but just showing that there's a flight of capital out of France because they're not going to be able to maintain their standard of living. They're completely dependent on the European Central Bank to print money to bail them out. And if that stops happening, they'll leave the EU. And so he's calling it Frexit, and he thinks it's fully on the cards. And if they leave, Germany will leave, and there goes the EU. So, yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't know the backstory about the EU and who started it and how it's all part of this, new world order towards one world government and everything, it's just great to see these things that were just so artificial and done by these billionaires pushing this agenda that they're starting to fall apart. It's going to be painful in the short term for all our societies and restructuring our economies, but again, this is our focus for the next couple of years: is how to get through all this, survive as well as hopefully prosper. Maintain privacy and come through the other side. And then I think once we get rid of all these corruption and people in power, the world's going to be a lot better place.
Yep. Stay safe and stay vigilant out there, everybody.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Michael. Guys, head over to Nuggets News for the free newsletter, all our research, all our high net worth VIP services, and haven't those chats been exciting lately? And silver's breaking out to all-time highs, and yeah, just that balanced portfolio of wealth protecting. What a time to be alive.
Yep.
Cheers,
Still
guys.
happening.